This conversation with Erin Shaw Street blew my socks off, and I hope it does the same for you. Erin is about 2 years sober, and she's in the media and wanting to tell better stories. So let's get started hearing about her story.
Here, we want to show you what's possible in the world of sobriety. We introduce you to the various tools, programs, and resources available, because there are way more options than you may even realize. We want you to find the one that works for you.
And we do it through people who share their pathway to recovery and will help you find your path to freedom. Because getting sober can feel hard enough. You don't have to do it alone. I'm Sarah Roberts.
And I'm Roger DeVoe, and this is Sobriety Starts Here.
I am so excited to have Erin Shaw Street with me today, having an amazing conversation about telling better stories. Welcome, Erin.
Hey, good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm just so excited to have this conversation with you. I'm a big fan. I've been following your work for a while, and I want you to tell everybody, what is Tell Better Stories?
Thank you for asking me that and asking me to share the story. So Tell Better Stories is a project that I launched on January 1st of this year, 2018. So for about a year and a half, I had been writing about the images of alcohol in media, specifically alcohol in women's lifestyle media, and watching that unfold in magazines, on social media, in marketing and advertising. I was really watching the stories that we were being told day after day and that we were telling and sharing. On January 1st of this year, I woke up and saw a story that really celebrated hangovers, and particularly celebrated hangovers in amongst female executives. And it was written by someone who I know. My background is I've had about 20 years in media. I'm a former magazine editor, newspaper reporter, PR practitioner, advertising lady. So this is the world in which I operate. And it's also a world that I used to tell those messages as well. I used to put those messages out. But I reached out to this friend and said, hey, I just want to have a conversation with you about that story that you wrote and why it could be problematic. It was like something just kind of that morning, after writing essays and posting about it on my social media, that morning I thought, it's really time to have deeper conversations about how we're talking about alcohol and women's relationships to alcohol in media of all sorts. And I reached out to her in a kind way and said, can I please share my perspective as somebody who is in the media and also as a woman in recovery with why these messages can be problematic. I didn't hear back from her. I still have hope. But that day I thought, you know what, it's really time for us to take a systematic look at the volume of images that we are getting. And I set out, I created Tell Better Stories to, number one, to document that. So a lot of people are having these conversations. I'm not the first one to do this. And people are saying, hey, there's a better way to tell stories about alcohol. But for me, it was very disparate. Even in my own writing, I was posting things on my blog or on my social or on my, across the board. So Tell Better Stories, number one, is an effort to get all of those images that we're seeing, or many of those images, in one place. And two, to have a conversation where we're not shaming people, but we are, in a very kind way, raising the issues of what it means to tell these stories about alcohol and moms, alcohol and yoga, alcohol and freedom, alcohol and beauty, and to raise that conversation in a place where we can talk with the content creators and really have that conversation about what these images mean and the power that they hold. So, my goal isn't necessarily it's not really just about calling out people, it's about calling them in and to call in content creators and decision makers to say, hey, we are at a crucial point in women's relationships to alcohol. We know that we in the US, alcohol abuse and addiction is on the rise. We're in the middle of a public health crisis. I believe we can hold that we have to hold that and create media in context of that, and in context of the experiences that so many women are having as they re-examine their message to alcohol. So my message with Tell Better Stories, it's not one of prohibition, it's not one of shame, it's one to really call in content creators. And when I say that, I also mean, you know, the person who's in their home creating, because now media is everyone. So it's not just the big media companies, it's not just people with huge marketing budgets, you know, it's influencers. And I believe everyone has the power to be an influencer. So ultimately the goal is to have conversations about what does it mean to tell better stories around alcohol and other drugs. What does that mean? The power of images, the power of words, that's what I have, it's really been the cornerstone of my life, you know, being in media. So pulling back, I just asked my colleagues, my friends, you know, strangers to say, hey, let's create a better space and tell better stories that honor the experience of so many people, so many women and men who are really reevaluating where they are with alcohol.
Yeah, and I really appreciate what you're doing, especially because you aren't just looking for those stories that are negative and being able to point at them and say, see, this is what we are doing wrong. You really are inviting people to share the stories that are on the flip side, where they have had a negative experience with alcohol. They have a real life story of recovery or of addiction and then recovery. And you're asking for all of these perspectives so that we can have a greater conversation about it, so that we have greater understanding about it. Because I think that for so long, the media has just been pushing alcohol on all of us and making us all believe that that is the way to a better life. That is the way to, you know, more success. You know, I interviewed Annie Grace, and of course, with her, you know, trying to work her way up the corporate ladder, she's having to drink more alcohol just to fit in. And I think that what you're doing is so important and so needed at this time, because it's just really highlighting the problem and also highlighting the solution, that it comes from raising our awareness. So I really love what you're doing.
Yeah, I really like to emphasize that Tell Better Stories is solutions based. So, so one, you know, I want to talk with my colleagues, my friends, the people I have not yet met, and say, hey, how can we, when you're at those editorial meetings, when you're faced with the pressures of, because I also understand the pressures of what it takes to create a ton of content. Media is a crazy business and it's only getting crazier. So, you know, I try to come at this as like, I understand I was that magazine editor. I know how to write a headline that gets clicks. I understand the pressures from advertising. You know, it is a really, really tough business, and I want to say that. And that's why I try to really kind of, when I put together the language around this, be very intentional about how I speak to those people who are making those decisions and who are writing and who are having to turn out 3 and 4 and 10 stories a day. It's really, really tough. And the fact is, we know that if you write a story about, you know, how to hide wine on your person, it's going to get clicks, which is a story that I wrote about last year. It's like how to hide wine and, you know, in a bracelet or in a bag. And, you know, and again, I probably would have, I didn't write that story, but I told plenty of other stories when I was a magazine editor that really did sort of celebrate that kind of, I say, you know, the cheeky nod, you know, sort of the 5 o'clock sometimes, and the cocktail culture, the cocktail cart. I mean, you know, I told those stories, but without really thinking, and I hadn't had that personal experience yet. I hadn't walked in those rooms of recovery. I hadn't talked with other women about their struggles. And, you know, to your point about Annie Grace and the corporate ladder, I mean, that's very much my story as well. I had a wonderful career, an amazing career. And with it came, you know, all the stresses that come with climbing up the ladder. And no one told me that there could be another way to handle the stress and the pressure of, again, media, incredibly crazy, changing landscape. But again, what industry is not crazy right now? No one told me there could be another way. So when I look back now and think about my personal story, it's like, well, you know, it's not that surprising that I turned to something that did work for a time. So, you know, what I see right now are all these women. Again, it doesn't matter your industry. It doesn't matter if you are a stay-at-home mom or you're out there, you know, just hustling and trying to make your way in the world. We are facing incredible pressures as women. But at the same time, you know, we're also waking up this is not just about alcohol. These discussions are not just about, that substance, but it's about so many other issues and so many things that are happening concurrently in the world. And just being really smart about how we can wake up. Again, I do not shame if someone chooses to drink, that is her story. But there are many of us who are choosing to not do that for many reasons. So how do we have our stories reflected in that landscape? So with Tell Better Stories, that's part of what I'm doing is, in addition to holding up the yoga and wine meme, I do want to hold up the stories of women who are forging the path. I think about the incredible account Unexpected Joy of, which is done by Catherine Gray, another former magazine editor. I said we need to have a club of former magazine editors who are sober. And what she does is this remarkable work where she's taking images, sort of creating other memes that sort of talk about what alcohol really does. So, you've seen that meme, a great story is never started with a salad, flipping that on its head. So how do we, and again, it's not just writers, it's, graphic artists, it's photographers. How do we raise up this alternative narrative that's very much becoming part of who of many of us are? And how do I shine a light on people who are like, you know what? Here is my big, amazing, fabulous life, and it does not involve the substance. So for me, it's that balance of kind of showcasing the volume of the images that we do see every day involving alcohol as lifestyle, and then also holding up the alternative narrative, which is like, you know what, there is such a big, amazing world out there for those of us who choose to walk another path.
Oh, that's just so beautifully said. That's exactly where I wanted you to go with explaining what is Tell Better Stories. So now that we kind of have that foundation laid, I'd love to dive deeper into your story, because then I feel like we'll get to come full circle at the end to where you are now, because I think it's interesting that you now are able to share where you're at in your life with alcohol, because you are now a woman in recovery. Prior to that, you're sharing stories that we're talking about hiding alcohol on your person, and all of the other things that we use to glorify alcohol use in our culture. So I definitely want to get into your story. So let's get started. You can start from wherever you want. I'd love to hear about your childhood and how you were raised, and then all the way up through when your addiction sort of took hold.
Yeah, of course. I'm born and raised in Clearwater, Florida. I had an incredible childhood. I'm very close with my family. I'm one of 3 children, and my family was a family built on love and on faith and on inclusivity. My parents really celebrated the diversity of all of their children, and really encouraged us to be whoever we wanted to be and who we really were. So all I ever wanted to be was a writer. So from a very young age, that was very much encouraged. Also from a young age, I had a lot of anxiety and social anxiety, which is very common. And coupled with my desire to please, my perfectionism from a young age, I always had that just that fear. There was a fear in me from a young age, and I got my sense of worth from performing. So whether it was, getting the A on the essay, or playing the saxophone in the band, or it was very much performance based. So my worth was tied to that performance, and that worked for a while. But as I got older, I became a reporter. I started as a newspaper reporter. I was a health and wellness reporter. So that's important too, because that's also an underpinning of my work too. So I spent about 10 years as a health and wellness reporter. And then the rest has been in travel and culture and food. Fast forward to in my 20s and 30s, I had a great life, a great career. I worked for many years at a cancer center doing public relations. Really passionate about the work there, advocating for patients. I was recruited to Southern Living magazine in 2008. And there I built a lot of their digital properties. I worked as a health and wellness writer. I became a travel and culture writer. And then eventually I became deputy editor of the magazine. So that's a lot in kind of one answer, but, and then along the way, I got married to an amazing man and have an amazing son. My son's name is Nate. He's 11. But somewhere in my 30s, the ways that worked for me previously stopped working. So that little girl who was so afraid and trying to perform never developed those coping mechanisms. And again, incredible family, incredible support. But come my 30s, when I was raising a small child, I was on the road, traveling, reporting, editing, and trying to kind of keep all the plates going. That's when things really started to get quite challenging. And that's when I started drinking more. The reality is I can trace it back to even my college days. There was some binge drinking, and that's a big part of my story is the binge drinking. It's what I used to cope.
And can we track back to when you were a child?
Yeah.
I know that you had anxiety as a young girl.
Yeah,
How did you cope with anxiety when you were a kid, or how did it manifest?
Yeah, I definitely couldn't put the words to that when I was a child. I wrote and I read. And that was my escape, was definitely like I hung out the library like cool girls do. And I expressed myself creatively, writing poetry, writing in my journal, and that was my release, or, that was the creativity. And then, later I got away from that because later in my life and my career, I used my words to all day long at work. I use them to write stories and other people's stories. And, so I started getting kind of away from those things that I had those tools, because there were tools. As a kid, it really was a creativity. And that's one of the beautiful things now. My sobriety date is March 13th, 2016, which is coming up on 2 years. So that creativity piece has really been a vital part, reconnecting with that, and with other women in recovery who really celebrate creativity, particularly Sondra Primeaux and Tammy Salas of the Unruffled. Actually, Sondra saved my life on my last day one, God willing. So anyhow, reconnecting with creativity has been a really big part of my story.
Sondra Primeaux saving your life. I remember listening to that podcast and just being like, oh my gosh, what a way to pay it forward. Talk about lofting our sisters and helping them through, and again, paying it forward. We typically have a hand up, or often that's the case, is where somebody else is helping us. And so I know that she did that with you, and what a beautiful story that was.
Yeah.
When you talk about your third day one, can you talk about your rock bottoms? I know you had a few. Can you go into that?
I had lots. In some ways, my rock bottoms were no different than anybody else's. The highlight reel of mine carried a lot of shame and a lot of pain for a long time, and now I can speak about them freely without that shame and that pain. There were many, many wake-up calls. I say that I realized that I had an issue by reading memoirs. I mean, kind of as all these things were happening in my 30s, I was reading memoirs like Mary Carr, Drinking a Love Story, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. But of course, there was another way to do it, right? One of the biggest happened in the fall of 2014, which at that point I was really at my height professionally in my magazine career, and really disconnected from what was going on inside of me. So there was a day in which I drank started during the day, drank into the evening, blacked out, got up, had to have somebody drive me home. Got up the next morning knowing I had to give a talk to about 100 people from all over the country, salespeople. And like the good little perfectionist that I am. I mean, I felt horrible. I'd been in a blackout the night before. But I threw on my clothes and was just determined to do it. And I went to the office and had my little, I like to say like that time of my life was like editor Barbie. Like I had my editor Barbie like dress on, I had the hair, like everything looked great. But I could barely stand up. Another part of my story that's also connected to my childhood, it's important to mention with that day, is I have a condition called dysautonomia. I've had it since childhood. And it's a disorder in which I get lightheaded easily, even when I'm not drinking, easily fatigued, exercise intolerance. So as a child, I passed out a lot. And it's interesting that I went to a substance that actually caused me to do that too. People with dysautonomia, with the kind that I have, actually aren't supposed to drink. So it's very interesting that I went like right there. So anyhow, it's important to mention that day because I was dehydrated, which is a trigger for my dysautonomia. I was hungover. I was full of fear and shame. And I got up in front of that room of over 100 people from all over the country and started giving my talk, and I passed out. I lost my vision. I passed out. I woke up and immediately said to my boss, let me finish the talk, which like really goes to show how sick I was. It really goes to show like really what a place I was in. Now, was that the time where I said, okay, well, this is it, I'm done? No, that was not it. Other bottoms included coming home at 7 a.m. and having to look at my husband and son. At that point, I knew, and that was in the fall of 2015. At that point, I knew I needed help. And at that point, I did enter 12-step rooms, and I also reached out to Holly Whitaker of Hip Sobriety, excuse me, and worked with her a bit. But I was not done. The final, again, God willing, because I really want to be respectful of the fact that this is a continuous process for me, but so I always say God willing when I talk about my last day one. But in March of 16, I was at South by Southwest, which is a notorious, like for somebody in early recovery, going there, no support system. Looking back, it was like, it was not a good situation for me. But I did drink, and long story short, I found myself in a room watching Brené Brown talk about the power of vulnerability and shame and being in the ring. And here I was, so broken, so full of fear, so full of shame. That was a moment where I really feel like God was saying, Erin, like, you have to change. You're going to die. Was I done? No. But the next day when I woke up in a hotel room, I hit my knees in just desperation. And I reached out to secret Facebook group. And that's when Sondra Primeaux answered me and said, grab your tennis shoes. I'll meet you downstairs, a stranger, and then walk with me in Austin, and said, there's a better way. So, that's just the highlight reel. So I think that goes to show how insidious this is. And it's also important to say, well, all that was going on, I was still functioning. I was still showing up, albeit not great, to my life. I was still, and at the time, at the end, I was working at an advertising agency, and so very disconnected from myself. But, I was still showing up and working and being a mom and being a wife. Again, not a great one. But the world didn't know. So I still get these questions. People are like, or they'll say, I had no idea. I had no idea you were going through that. And that's a very common story. I mean, that's what we do. And that's why my heart so much now is working with women who are, have these beautiful lives, but are struggling on the inside, because I've walked that walk, and I know, and when you have to try to, convince people you have a problem, which some people, still say, like, do you really have, you're like, so never ever. Last year my brother got married in Italy. He had an amazing wedding, and it was like, in the middle of wine country. And, I had a few conversations where people said, like, so you're not even going to have a glass of wine at that? I'm like, no, I would die. Like, that to me, it's death. But it's not about what I give up. For me, it's what I get. And one other thing I want to say, and this is it's not a rock bottom piece, but one thing that does come to mind is, as I share that, and as I share the story about my brother's wedding, my father married my brother and his husband And as I sat in that field in Italy and saw this beautiful demonstration of love and inclusivity, I was so proud to be a sober woman, to be present for that event, to be present for my family, to witness this love unimpaired with nothing in my body. And I have to say it was a turning point too, because I realized so much of what I was taught about inclusivity and creating safe spaces, and owning who you are was modeled, by my family. So, when I think about the bottoms and how low I was and how alone I was, to me now I think you were never really alone. You're surrounded by people who love you and who no matter who you are. So, it's one message I'm really passionate about women is, when I talk to women, is like, you have so many friends you don't even know yet. And we are here for you with all your stuff, bring it to us. We've been there, and we must create safer spaces for everyone.
I love what you said. All of that was perfection. And it's so true. We have such a sisterhood. I mean, yes, we've got brothers in this space, of course, as well. But when it comes to women in recovery, there is no reason anymore for any of us to feel any shame or embarrassment. Before we started recording, I said to you that truly why I've created this project is to pay it back for all of the years that I held on to my story and didn't share and didn't let my voice be heard because of my own shame. It was such a disservice to all of the women who could have used my voice and
That's right.
could have connected to me during that time, and maybe it would have changed their lives. Because when we think that, Sondra saying that to you, get your running shoes, meet me downstairs, the fact that she was even in Texas at the time, she doesn't, oh wait, does she live in Texas?
Yeah, she lives.
Yeah, she lives. But the fact that you were in Texas at that time, you're in Alabama.
Yeah,
Why are
in
you,
Alabama? Yeah.
Right? Like, why were you in the same city at the same time, at that same moment in time? And for her to be able to do that for you is just such a testament to the sisterhood and to the way that we want to serve and help our sisters to rise. And I'm just loving all of the collaboration and the connection and the beauty that comes from all of us sharing our stories. I do want to track back a little bit. I'm curious, and I think that our listeners might be too. When was the first time that you drank alcohol? Because knowing that you had this condition that you shouldn't be drinking, I imagine your parents, did they ever say to you, you should never drink alcohol? This is not good for you. They obviously knew about your condition and all of that.
Well, the thing about dysautonomia is I was not diagnosed until actually till my late 20s, early 30s. So, they took me to a lot of medical specialists and they couldn't find a diagnosis. So I also really have a heart for women who are trying to understand, invisible illnesses, which this is one of them, right? You look fine. So, so they didn't know, and a lot of people, just suffer with it without knowing. So they didn't know. I did have my first drink in high school and I hated it. Some people talk about that, like just that love and that euphoria. Like I thought it tasted disgusting. It was, I remember it was like orange juice and vodka, and I'm from Florida. And I was like, just trying to like, I love being a Floridian. I was like, I'm from Florida. Did you know that? But it was gross. I kind of had to like teach myself how to drink. And where it really took off for me was my junior year of college. I was interning on Capitol Hill for a senator. And that's where I had gone up there out of a breakup, really insecure. And I was surrounded by all these people who drank a lot. And that's really where, I started equating drinking with, a way out and seeing very, people in power who I perceived to be in power. I was a 20-year-old, woman. That's really where it clicked, was seeing people, go to the bars after work. And that's where it was kind of, off to the races, when it started clicking that this is a way that I could distance myself from the reality. But again, that was, that was in 1996. So, it took quite a long time to get to where I am today. And that's another part of my message is, for me, it was not a linear progression. There was a progression. It's very clear. But there was a good period where I kind of not stopped, but again, mine was a binge drinking until it escalated. So, but it took a long time, though the signs were clearly there when I look at my journals from 96, and it breaks my heart. And again, that's part of the messaging is I want to reach out to young women. And what's so beautiful now is there are more examples so young women can see this doesn't have to be part of your story. We just have this generation that's coming up is so incredible. These like incredible leaders, these feminist, leaders who are the next generation, and how empowering for them to go, you know what? I want to be in my body. I'm here for the fight. I love that. I can't recall who said it, but we can't smash the patriarchy when we're smashed. Like, how great is that, right? So, I'm so thankful for how my story unfolded, as painful as it was, because I can say, hey, young woman, I was there. Woman with the career on the rise, there. Mom, there. And like, guess what? You don't have to go down that path, right?
That responsibility, that release of that, the weight of having to keep up and having to do what we think that society is forcing us to do, seeing that there really is another way to live our lives. It's so empowering. So yeah, I absolutely agree that
so great
women that are rising up and that are showing us that they're just not going to take this. They're just not going to listen to it. But at the same time, got that dichotomy where, all of this messaging in the media, and it drives me crazy. I posted something not long ago where it's like the headline says one thing about how fabulous alcohol is for our health. And then you scroll down into the actual article, and at the very bottom, sort of the fine print of the article, it's, well, it does cause cancer and all of these other things. But anyway,
yeah, the health benefits. Honestly, there's so much work to be done in this space that it can be almost overwhelming, because even if you could take a look at even these the stories that hold up the health benefits, which I wrote about one last week, which it's, people live longer who drink, and then you scroll down, you realize they cited one study, and may or may not include, oh, by the way, alcohol is still killing more people than opioids. And that is an incredibly important thing to talk about too. We are in the middle of an opioid epidemic, but I believe we're in the middle of an addiction epidemic. So yeah, you hold that. That's really where, for me, this disconnect is so evident that, I'll see a photo of, the rose all day shirt, or, the person doing, I keep coming back to the, beer yoga. There's an event here in Birmingham and I'm seeing these like amazing young women. And again, I don't want to shame. I don't want to, everybody is walking his or her own story, but we do have to take a look at what we know. And it's in the greater context of what alcohol is and what it can do. For some reason, and I know the reason, I think people don't want to turn towards and look at the data. And again, I was a health reporter. I would look at the data and just go, yeah, I just don't want to see, we just don't want to see it. And that speaks to how powerful this substance is. That speaks to how powerful this culture is, that says, you know what, here's data, but you're different. And you do deserve the, hangover brunches are fabulous. And every event, whether it's a fundraiser or a play date, needs to have a signature cocktail. And again, I say this from a place of love, because I'm the person who also told those stories. I'm the person who had the Santa party with the signature cocktail. And I'm the editor who thought it was cheeky to, when you saw a story like that about the health benefits, to, cheers. It's actually, it's really easy to create that content. It's actually, I think, more difficult to step back and create a story that really looks at it from a comprehensive perspective. So to that too, I do hear, well, you're the one with the problem. What we don't understand why, okay, a common criticism I receive is like, yay on you, because you stopped drinking and healed your life. It's a work in progress. Yay on you. But, you know, why do you feel like it matters for other people? And you have the problem, not me. And that's why I repeat over and over again that it is not a them problem, it's an us problem. So, you know, and because I see every single day, and I get calls from women every single day saying, help. You know, I can in good conscience with the gifts that I've been given, I can't sit here and not do this. I can't sit here and not shine a light on like and create conversation. I can't not do it. You know, this was not the dream of my life was, you know, was not, it didn't look like this. You know, this was not, you know, I think about the other day I was sitting in a friend's minivan, and she was really, really struggling with her relationship to alcohol. And we were sitting in the rain, and I thought, this is not the journey that I thought I was going to get. But my gosh, like, here I am, and I'm alive. And just like Sondra did for me, I am going to pass on this message to any woman who is in need. I'm so thankful. Like, you know, I joke, it's like, I'm so lucky that I was chosen for this walk and that I got a chance to live, because the reality is it could have gone another way. And I see myself every day in men and women who, because even when this is the other reality, is like, this is such a tough thing. Even I see people who are trying so hard and still struggling, not able to stop, suffering, and not able to live their best lives. And to me, that's really humbling. And it reminds me, like, you know what, you got a reprieve, Erin. And with that reprieve, you better go out there and do what you were called to do. Because I wasn't called, it turns out, surprise, you know, I wasn't called to run a glossy magazine. You know, I wasn't called to make ads about garbage disposals, which I did. You know, that's not the calling. This is my calling. So I sound kind of preachy, but you know, this is my passion. This is my calling.
Oh my gosh, keep preaching, please do. And I know, isn't it amazing? Every time I receive an email or a private message or you know, some kind of communication from somebody who's just saying, I've never said this to anybody, or I need help, or I'm so scared of what's to come, but I think I need some help. And it's like, oh, it's just, I know what that takes to type those words and to share that, because, you know, that was part of my story. I was so afraid to share my truth and to hit post on that very first blog that I shared in 2015. And so I get those shaky hands and that feeling in your heart that, oh my gosh, if I say these words, if I ask for help for this thing that I realize now that I cannot control, then that means that I'm saying that I've got a problem, and I'm saying that that other life isn't working for me anymore. And once you open up that door and that conversation, there really is no going back. And I mean, yes, lots of people open the door and then slam it shut and then go back to the life, but there's still always something there. There's always some of that awareness that has been raised that you can't deny any longer once you've said the words or once you've reached out. So I love it that you and I are both doing that, where we are open doors, where people can come to us and share and be able to share their truth, because that's just the way it is. That's how it feels when you're so afraid, you're so scared to say those words. But once you do, and you kind of connect with other people who are clearly, vibrantly living in recovery, you can all of a sudden maybe have a tiny seed of belief that life might be able to be better on that other side, because you know the other side, you know that it's shitty and it's dark and it's, you know, filled with remorse and shame and embarrassment and just feeling shitty all the time. And so when we can just imagine for just a moment that there might be that other better way, that's just the magic of it all.
Yeah. And I mean, you said that beautifully. You know, you said it, and it's so exciting now that, you know, you and our sisters are speaking this truth so publicly, and offering up these resources. I do think we're in a magic time, and there is such a spirit of collaboration. Everybody comes at it a little bit differently, right? But there's room at the table for all of us. I know for me that when I first wrote publicly about this, I knew there was really no way of going back, right? It was like the doors were open, because if I had done it quietly and behind closed doors, I didn't feel good. I didn't feel like I was living my truth. And there's nothing to be ashamed about. There's nothing, I mean, that's the thing. So it's just, I think it's an exciting time. And it's this beautiful onion, of course, because, it's just one part. The alcohol was just one part. It was just one part for me. I'm in a million other journeys, now because of it. But I used to keep a screensaver on my computer that said everything you want is on the other side of fear. And I knew that in my bones, and I would sit, but I just didn't know how to get through. And I never would have gotten through had I not at least talked to one other person, and I'd fantasize, what would it be like if I could just get rid of this? But I honestly couldn't see a way. I could not see a way. So I think the visibility of this movement now, and the fact that, people are celebrating sobriety as something that's cool and incredible, and that's a really huge turning point, that it is something that's desirable. It's not other, right? I mean, we face enough of our lives as women as other. So when you say like, come on in, the water's fine, it's like, great. Now we can get to living. I mean, it is a part of my life. It's the cornerstone of my life. But with that, now I can get to living all these other pieces. So, I understand people who do choose to enter into sobriety and recovery, privately and may not identify publicly. I do understand that. But man, it feels so good to not have 10 different lives. I mean, it feels so good.
Ever. And just being fully integrated. And like you said, it's one part of our lives, and yet it is the cornerstone. It allows for all of the other parts of our lives to even happen, because all I know is when I was a drinker, it was my whole life, and it took up so much space that I didn't have any opportunity to do anything else. I mean, my whole day was just wrapped around when I can get through to get to the drinking. So yes, sobriety is just one part, but it informs every other piece of our lives, for sure.
Absolutely. It's I like to say, it's like we walk through this door and now we're in this like great party. You're in this great room. So it does inform. It informs everything, for me. But it's like now I'm in this space where it is literally like, the best people, the best party. So it does. And it informs, everything. And that to me is really exciting, to have the chance to walk this out over a lifetime.
Agree. It does certainly feel like we are with this group of the coolest people, of just the coolest, most badass, awesome people who have been through so much, and yet, and overcome so much. So those are the stories that are so awesome. Those are the people that I want to be connected with, the ones that have overcome and that have prevailed and that have really dug in and done the work to figure out who they really are. I mean, who's more interesting than that? Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine how shallow I was when I was really mired in my addiction. The things that I must have talked about, I mean, half of them I don't remember. These shallow, silly, pointless conversations. Truly, for a lot of my drinking career, my drinking buddies were not always people that I, certainly not people, and love to them, but not people that I would want to be associated with now, right? It's just a whole different life. And so that's, again, why this project is so near and dear to my heart, because it's to share that we're really cool people. This is a really great way to live. And it's a really authentic way to live. And it's a way that you can connect with other people on a truly deep, authentic level. And what is better than that, than really getting to know who people really are, starting with ourselves.
Yeah, it's true connection. I mean, I came to it because I thought there would be a connection and a freedom. And for me, there was not. I mean, I've gotten everything that I was looking for in drinking. People say that a lot. I get it in sobriety. And the other thing, thank you so much for sharing that and for your work and for just leading the way. I think about, how important it is to also stress that, you don't have to have, everybody can decide when he or she, if they're thinking about stopping drinking, opts out. Like, I love that term, opts out, right? This whole, am I an alcoholic? Am I addicted? Do I have a problem? There's a small, still voice inside, that tells us that we might need to change a behavior. So what I also love about what's happening now is people can just say, you know what, this doesn't serve me. And maybe they haven't gone through some of the things that we've talked about. But I don't feel good. I can't, wake up in the morning and do the workout that I want to do, or I can't show up. Like, I love the idea of people being like, you know what, this just doesn't serve me. And that is really cool to me, is like having these conversations with men and women today who are like, I don't necessarily think I'm going there, but it just doesn't hold a lot for me. Or hearing from women who say, because of these conversations, they're now thinking, why am I going to that bottle of wine? What is the motivation? So I think it's really, really cool, like and important to say, you don't even need to identify as, it doesn't matter how you identify, or if you identify with being in recovery, or if you can just go, yeah, this isn't serving me, and then walk from there. So that is very exciting to think about this, as an option, regardless of where you fall on the spectrum too, right?
That's such a good point, because too many people have the belief held that there has to be some kind of serious rock bottom moment, and that is just simply not the truth for a lot of people. I mean, even your rock bottoms, to some people, that is not a rock bottom. I got a DUI. To me, that was a rock bottom. To others, that might not be. It doesn't matter. It can also just be, like you say, I just feel shitty doing this. I'm just not feeling like it's serving me anymore. I don't think it's doing me any favors. I'm kind of experiencing issues in my relationships, and I'm not feeling that well. I'm waking up and I'm not feeling great. I'm waking up in the middle of the night after having a few glasses of wine. Like, it doesn't even matter what volume people are drinking in. It can be 1 or 2 glasses every night, or 3 times a week. Whatever it is, we get to define what addiction or what our dependence on alcohol means to us. And we also get to define whether we choose to use a label or completely not use a label. It doesn't matter. You can honestly just say, I don't drink, period. It doesn't have to require anything more than just that kind of a statement. It's not, I don't drink because I'm an alcoholic. I don't drink because I have alcohol use disorder. I don't drink because I have alcohol dependency. I don't drink because it's caused issues in my life. I don't drink because blah, blah, blah. It can just fucking be, I choose not to drink.
Yeah. And how great is that? How great, like, I don't drink. Because it's really not about, there's so many, well, what are people going to say? And you know what? It's no one's business. Like, no one walks around and says like, oh, you don't eat yogurt? Oh my gosh, you're lactose intolerant? Oh my goodness, what is that like for you? I'm not lactose intolerant. I love yogurt. But like, oh, you're missing out. Oh my goodness. Like, no one does that, right? But, so it doesn't really matter what people say, but just saying like, I don't drink, because it's no one's business, what we put into our bodies.
And yet we say it doesn't matter what people think. And yet we live in a society that we give a major shit about what everybody thinks about us. That was a huge part of my story, is that I drank to fit in. I drank because I felt like I needed to. Of course, I was also quelling anxiety and all of the other reasons why I was filling a hole inside due to trauma and pain from childhood and all of that. So I get all of that, but there is, and as you see in the media, a huge pressure for people to drink because it's normalized and because it's glamorized and it's sexualized and everybody's doing it.
And it's what we do. Yeah. That it's just what we, so, to that too, I think it's, and this is something that I want to become more involved with is creating physical spaces, where it's just normal that there's not alcohol there. And, I think about a story that I read this week about a pop-up bar at South by, which was so interesting to me. of course I wouldn't have gone to it, but when I was drinking, but it's a pop-up bar without alcohol. And I'm like, how cool is that? I think about Charleston Food and Wine Festival, which is happening a couple days in Charleston, and they have some really cool sober after parties by an organization of restaurants and restaurant professionals who are like, here it is, and it's at an amazing restaurant, right? So I think there's so much work to be done in creating those spaces. So you don't, because it is, I mean, as much as I say, yeah, I don't care, when I go to the party or the fundraiser or whatever the event is, and there's nothing there for me but tap water, yeah, for a minute, it's like, it's just something we need to be more mindful of.
Yeah, it shines a light on the fact that you're not drinking because no one's even considered us.
Nobody's even like, why would you? Which is, again, it's really cool to see, very cool non-alcoholic drinks, sort of craft drinks happening. Some people call them mocktails. Better Without Booze is doing some phenomenal job in looking at that. But like, no one even thinks about that. You don't see these things, of course, until you're in that space. But again, even that is a message that shows a message when there's nothing but tap water. So that's really like, when I think about Tell Better Stories and this whole, all of this work, it's just really getting people to be more mindful of, and whether those spaces we create are online, whether they're in real life, whether it's a conversation that, we have with a girlfriend, like that, we have some work to do. We have a lot of work to do to build a culture that is more inclusive of those of us who, for whatever reason, are just like, this isn't part of my life, because we still want to have fun. We still want to, like, it's the two aren't, mutually exclusive. So yeah, there's a lot of work, and that's one thing I would love to partner more with organizations who are creating just those activities. Again, not even it doesn't have to be specifically for people who are sober, but just activities where, yeah, they're alcohol free and they're cool, like the Daybreaker, the dance parties, like that. It's not even the sort of the other of, oh, okay, well, this is a party for sober people with problems. We just don't have alcohol here because that's how we roll. That's like part of the lifestyle. And, I think as we look towards a culture of health and wellness and it's like, yeah, I think we're going to see more things where it's like, yeah, why would we have that at this event? Like, that's just something we don't do.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of work to be done in that space of just creating, I think, non-alcoholic events that are, that it's just part of the dynamic, right?
And a huge part of the marketing. And it's just sharing that with people to let them know that this is available, this is an option. And again, doesn't matter how you're labeling yourself, just knowing that this is a place where you can honestly have fun. And I honestly believe that I've had more fun in recovery than I certainly ever did in my drinking days. I mean, in my drinking days, it was just lather, rinse, repeat. It was just the same bullshit day after day after day, just drinking to get drunk, got drunk, passed out, woke up the next day, did it all over again. Right. So I can tell, for anybody out there that's listening or watching right now that's considering quitting drinking, or you're dipping your toe in the water and wondering what it's all about, listen to these conversations, listen to what Erin's saying. Life is better without it.
Well, and one thing that's important to mention too is, from a business perspective, this is coming. Even aside from all the amazing things that happen with sobriety and recovery, companies are getting smart. There are a lot of us. And that's also another conversation that I want to have with these companies. Like, the messages that companies are putting out, particularly when they're in the health and wellness and lifestyle space, they matter. So, even if somebody isn't their motivation isn't necessarily, to a do-gooder motivation or coming from that place, I believe we are going to see a shift in tides with our perception of alcohol, kind of like cigarettes. I think that's coming. Of course, Holly Whitaker of Hip Sobriety does some amazing work in that, but I think it's coming. So even from a business perspective, it's like, you're starting to see companies who are investing in non-alcoholic drink development and restaurants that are investing in that. And and again, it's like, there's that piece of it too. Not to mention the piece of it of, businesses really taking a look at how drinking is part of their culture and how that could be a very dangerous thing.
Let alone talking about the lost productivity that occurs because staff is
correct.
Yeah.
So, you start peeling this, there's layer after layer of this. It's like, there's so much, and, there's so much to be done, but there are so many of us who are working in the space and bringing awareness and saying, hey, this is happening. This is coming. This has implications, so many cultural implications, that, I know what side I want to be on, and that's the right side.
And it's funny because you say there's so much to be done, and there is so much being done, which is amazing and encouraging. And I just want to remind anybody again who's watching or listening, it all starts within. It all starts with each individual making a choice, because we vote with our dollars. We vote, we get to have an influence. We can often think that we're just one person deciding to make a change in our lifestyle. We are one person that's no longer buying from liquor stores or alcohol stores or wherever you buy alcohol. This is lost revenue for companies. They are going to have to start to really take notice of this major cultural shift that's going on, and it is happening, and it is encouraging to see. But it takes each and every one of us to stand up. And I know that again, I don't choose to feel guilt about it, but me holding on to my truth for so many years because of shame and embarrassment about my truth, it's like, there is no time for that right now. I understand people who aren't ready, and I get that, to share, and I respect that, of course. That was my story. But I am so inspired. I just chatted with Beth Lipholtz last night, and she was 20 years old and got sober. And it's like, 20, I was just barely getting started. And to think that this young woman made that decision, of course, with the help of her family, getting her into treatment and all of that. But to know that we are really going to be able to rise above and to decide to share the truth of our lives and our stories in order to help other people to know that they are not alone. It's funny when you were saying, you never knew that this would be your work, but what better work than, oh my gosh, than being able to use your real story.
I'm so thankful. I always say, all I wanted, as a young reporter, the truth was tantamount. And that's all I wanted to do, was write the truth and write real stories. And now I got farther and farther away from that in my career, but the blessing is I've been reconnected to that now. And, I am so thankful that this is my story. And, I want to say too, I love what you just shared. And I think it's important to say, we do vote and we do make decisions with our dollars, and also with our likes and our shares. So I think it's also important to say, and is that we do have the power. It does start with each person, and I believe we have to do the work first before we can, bring it out into the world. But another important part of the message I want to share is, we need allies. So even if my friend doesn't identify as having a drinking problem, or that's not her issue, we need allies in this fight to stop liking and sharing these really dangerous narratives. And that's another, whether it be writing to, and that's something I'm developing now, is some language where you can write to the t-shirt manufacturer. You can write to Target, you are amazing and I love you, but you carry so much of this stuff, and giving people the language to say, this is why this is a problem. So whether you're in this space or an ally, that like, that click, that share, that purchase all adds up. So I think that's a really important part of where we are too now, is to think outside of the spaces of recovery and sobriety, and to bring in allies, because we're dying. If you step back and look at the data, we're dying.
Literally and figuratively.
Yes.
like literally dying, and also dying by shriveling up and not expressing ourselves to our fullest potential. Absolutely.
Yes. And we are mothers and daughters and brothers and sons and husbands and colleagues and aunts and uncles. There's no one who isn't touched by this. There's no one. So where I get really riled up is, it's not funny anymore. It's not cheeky. It's not wacky. It's just tired. And, I just ask, just the way that I see my brothers and sisters walking in. I mean, this past weekend in Birmingham, we had an incredible walk, and heroin walk, and there were nearly 5,000 people walking in solidarity, which was so beautiful. But this walk is it's something we can also do every day. Again, so it's like, let's walk. I see no difference in the people who are suffering in that park who lost loved ones, and the people who are suffering right now in my suburban cul-de-sac. So it's like, that's where I get so fired up is, and saying it with love, saying it with respect. I do believe, Oprah always says, she quotes Maya Angelou's, "When you know better, you do better." I don't blame people for creating this stuff or liking it or sharing it, because we haven't had a long history of the conversations around this. I don't blame them, but when you know better, you do better. And they just might not know how dangerous and harmful these messages are to the people who are consuming them. They just might not know. So
it's so true, because somebody that's creating that content who doesn't have an issue with alcohol, that's putting this message out there, really does not know the harm that it might be causing.
Right. They're not ill. I believe people aren't coming from a place of ill will. But it is 2018, and the world is waking up to so many things. We are awake now. And I think the conversation we're going to be having a year from now, and 2 years from now, and 3, and it will be slow. I mean, that's the other important. I mean, I have hope, but I also recognize that we're talking about institutions. We're talking about, so, things may not happen overnight, but they're happening. And I will say, I've had conversations the past couple of weeks where people have pulled me aside and said, editors who are in publications and in various parts of media, like, "Hey, I saw what you said about that alcohol lifestyle thing, and I hadn't thought about it before. And, because of that, we had a conversation at our, around our newsroom or around our editorial table." And I'm like, thank you. That's all I ask. That's all I want, is just for y'all to have a conversation about it. Like, thank you. Like, yes, it would be amazing if, Ellen saw all the messages that I know you wrote something about what she had on her show, and I've written about it. And a lot of people, like, it would be amazing if Ellen went on and said, "Wow, I didn't take the perspective of all those who are suffering and have suffered from alcohol when I created those wine videos with Kristen Bell." Like, that would be great. Will that happen? I don't know. We're going to see celebrities step out and be like, "Wow, I just didn't know." But as one of my readers pointed out, you don't need to have 1 million followers to be an influencer. We're all people of influence.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's so true. Again, one person who changes their life because of something that we've said or done or that they've connected with, we know our work matters.
Yeah, it's so good. It is just, it's so good. It's such a blessing to be part of, it's a blessing to be alive, I used to look at people who are like, "It's such a gift," and, kind of roll my eyes and be cynical. "Oh, it's such a gift," and I can't say I jump out of bed in the morning. I can't say, like, I jump out of bed like, "It's another great day." Like,
like, it's still real life, people.
It's still real life. But I have so many tools to deal with it so much better than, a bottle of Chardonnay. I just can't, I can't imagine, because I did it for so many years. But I can't imagine numbing out, because when you numb out the fear, you numb out the joy. And when you numb the darkness, you numb the light. And we weren't put on this earth. We were put on this earth to let our light shine. I mean, that's what I believe. And to do the hard work and to face the criticisms and, call me I'm okay with it. Like, I've been through worse. Yeah, we were put here to shine, so I'm just fortunate to get to do this work every single day and to have these conversations.
Oh, they're just the best kind of conversations. I could do this the rest of my life. I love it so much. And connecting with you has just been a dream. You mentioned your tools. I know that AA was a big part of your early recovery. Is it still part of your recovery now?
It is. So yeah, I am part of 12-step fellowship. And it gives me really is, for me, a set of principles and a design for living. And I've met incredible women here in Birmingham, which has been really important for me. But it's not the only modality. So I definitely believe in a multimodality recovery for myself. So
can you share some of your other tools?
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course, connecting with women, online is a big deal, and listening to podcasts, some of which we've mentioned, is terrific. I do physically. I discovered Pilates in my recovery, and that is a really important part of my practice. In fact, starting next week, I'm going to be, this was such a wonderful occurrence, a local Pilates teacher, another woman in recovery approached me and said, thank you for sharing your story. That's my story. And I said, I have this dream. I'd love to have a Pilates for women in recovery group. And she said, we can do it. So starting next Wednesday, there's going to be a class here in Birmingham. Open to, I know, how great is that?
Oh, it's the best. Congratulations.
And I've been connecting with more women in the Pilates space. Jenna Zafino, who recently shared her story, very well respected Pilates teacher. So that's a big part of it. So
for anyone that doesn't know what Pilates is, it's sort of like yoga. It's a lot of stretching and slow movements. I guess I would say.
It was. People think of Pilates for way to get like amazing abs. I don't have amazing abs yet, but it was created by Joseph Pilates. Actually, he was a prisoner of war, and and he created it like in his hospital bed. So it's actually a therapeutic program. It was founded on a therapeutic approach to healing the whole body. So it's actually a mind, body, spirit program where they all become aligned. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that happens therapeutically. Anybody, like yoga, anybody can do it. And I'm connected with an amazing instructor who has shepherded me along the process. So that's great.
I just want to point out, so I love that you're able to do this, considering exercise and fitness is sometimes tough for you. So that's amazing.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's actually the first thing that I've ever been able to do. So I had a lot of shame around even a very low impact cardio class. Like I would pass out in jazzercise. Again, not related, even when I wasn't drinking heavily. Exercise intolerance is part of my story. So Pilates, is beautiful because it is for literally anybody. So it's the first thing in 40 years that I've really been able to move and deal with some stuff around, my body. So really feel in my body. And in fact, my instructor's so wonderful when she connected me with other women who have similar issues, and it's just a great modality. So I would highly encourage people, and there's a lot of online resources, though I do encourage people to find an instructor to work one-on-one, kind of with your body. So that's one. I am, my faith is, my faith and my recovery are hand in hand. I say recovery is the cornerstone. My faith is cornerstone too. So yeah, I'm connected with my church. I love just reading. This is a spiritual walk. So I love, listening to people Rob Bell is brilliant and amazing, and, listening to other leaders. That's the thing. Even though I'm in Birmingham, I can connect, we all can connect to all these incredible resources around the world. So, but I really needed a point to not, because I have so many online resources, I'm trying to make it a point to get out and meet people in real life. So like I recently joined a group at church just to meet women in real life. So that's really important. And yes, my, as I mentioned at the beginning, my writing, my reading, that's my, that is, it's my heart. So getting to write authentically, and work on various projects, including Tell Better Stories, is phenomenal. I keep thanks to a lot of women in recovery, but particularly Tammy Salas, I keep a gratitude journal. Here it is.
Beautiful.
I do that. I keep a gratitude journal every day, I keep a prayer journal every day. I mean, I have a lot of journals. Like self-care is kind of like a full-time thing for me. Though I do work, but I have to take care of myself. So there's a lot of, a lot of daily practices of checking in, prayer, meditation both in my home and then in a group. Went to one last night that was beautiful because I need that accountability. I really need a lot of accountability. So yeah, there's this whole long list of toolkits in my toolkit, but they really all come back to faith, community, movement, and right. Yeah, connection, only connect. That's it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully said. Thank you for sharing those tools. I know that's going to help a lot of people, just even maybe just sparking something that they might be able to use. So I love that. I also wanted to ask, is your husband sober?
No, but he doesn't drink a lot. And it's just something that's never held a lot of interest for him. Mm-hmm. So he has a beer occasionally at meals, when we go out but it just has never really interested him.
And was that a conversation that you two had to have after you got sober? Did you ask him for a while to not drink in front of you or not have any alcohol in the home? Or was that just sort of a no big deal right out of the gate for you?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. Well, I got rid of all the alcohol, he did have a couple bottles of liquor that I moved to the garage where he had some, bottles where he might have a sip yearly, which is not how I drank. And it wasn't the stuff I drank, but I still wanted it out of the way. I had to get rid of the wine. I got rid of the glasses. I repurposed, I collect a lot of vintage, homeware and clothes and everything. And I repurposed my bar carts. I turned them into plant carts. Right. But so there was a little bit in the home, and we did have, he would ask at the beginning, does it bother you? If we would go out to dinner, will it bother you if I have a beer? I honestly can't, the first few months were such a blur for me and there wasn't a lot of going out because I was just a mess. I was working and going to meetings and in bed and just not in a space to go out. But now it's not an issue. It's not triggering for me if he has a beer. There's not a lot. We don't really keep a lot of alcohol in the home. It's just not part of what we do.
I want to just take a moment to comment on your very early sobriety, because again, we are reaching people who maybe are just for the first time Googling how to quit drinking. Yes. Or they're dipping their toe in the water and they're nervous about it and they're concerned. And I love that you touched on, you were in bed, you were not going out, you were struggling in those first days, weeks, months. And that is how it can be for so many of us. That was my story too. It was really, really hard in those early days. And those are the days where it just feels like it's just so much easier to just pick up again, because why go through this pain? It is horrible. It is awful. We want to avoid pain as much as possible as human beings, and we want to achieve pleasure as much as we can as human beings. So it makes sense that so many of us just in those early days cannot string a few days together because it's so fucking painful. It's so awful. I love that you touched on it. It is awful.
Yeah, I want to be honest about it. I don't want to scare people. It's kind of like childbirth where I'm like, okay, if you want to know, I don't want to spring it on the, the 8-month pregnant lady, oh girl, it's going to be real hard. And it is different. I mean, it is different, but yeah, I went through hell. I went through hell, and I tried to stop many times. And I did. It's harder. It's much more difficult to not drink those first days, weeks, months. The difference for me, I mean, all the times I tried to do it myself, I always would, because I mean, physically, emotionally, I would always go back to the drink. So really what the turning point was getting really honest with another person, with my husband, and then surrounding myself with support. There is no way that I could have done it. I mean, I need a lot of support now. And I need a lot. I have a whole system. But those first, it was a brutal time. Actually have, I have an email that I sent to Holly when I first I made a go of it. And it's such a beautiful gift. She sent it to me a few months ago. And I literally said, because it was a snapshot of where I was. And I was like, and she was saying, where do you want to be? And I was painting this picture, but I didn't know if it was possible. I mean, and so I would say too, I mean, the other piece of it is, to reach out and talk to a medical professional. There are some things I wish I did not go entirely alone. Like, you don't, and it may actually be dangerous, to go it alone. So now I say for the new person is connect to another person, call your, physician, call your counselor. There are, AA is not for everyone, but there are meetings all around the world. And if you walk into that room and say, I need help, you're going to have people who are going to steer you. Yeah. So, I want to be really honest about how difficult it can be. And it can be difficult. I mean, there's a thing called PAWS, post-alcohol withdrawal syndrome. It takes some time for our brain to restore. So it's not going to happen overnight. I've heard a woman say, like, my hair wasn't sober for 2 years. It took, and it's like, or 3 years. I mean, it takes some time. So my message is like, give yourself grace, but arm up with people who can help you, because, the alcohol is always, it's always going to win. It's very easy for it to win if you're not really surrounded, I think, with support.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. I think that probably is a perfect place for us to end, even though I want to talk to you forever.
I know, this has been so incredible. Thank you for the work that you do, and for just, for bringing together so many voices who are giving hope. It really excites me. I get so excited for that woman who's going to see this and just starting this journey, or this woman who's a little further along and, and struggling or feels alone, like, by putting these voices together and showing what we can do together, it gives so much hope, whether you have 24 hours or still haven't made the decision. Sober Curious, welcome, Sober Curious. Like, we love you, we see you, like, we honor you. So, it doesn't matter if you have 0 hours or, 25 years, like, the message is one of hope. And I'm so thankful to be included in this conversation.
Oh my goodness, that could not have been more beautifully said. Thank you so much, Erin. It is an honor to know you and a privilege to have this opportunity to sit down with you. Thank you for your time. Your work matters. It is amazing. You are changing lives. If people want to get in touch with you, where are the best places to find you?
Yeah, so the best place to find me on Instagram, you can find me at Erin Shaw Street. That's one word. And Tell Better Stories 2018 on Instagram. My site is erinshawstreet.com, and I'm in the process of finalizing tellbetterstoriesmedia.com, and that's going to be up soon. And that's going to be a place where all these resources will be gathered in one spot. So there'll be resources for people who do want to reach out to the companies, to let them know, hey, this is an issue. There will be, prompts for content creators. There will be resources for for everything. So that is going to be up shortly. But yeah, everywhere else, it's just Erin Shaw Street and, Tell Better Stories 2018. So please reach out. I love to hear from people. I love to see examples, good and bad. I would love to talk about partnerships where we can bring more of these events, kind of in real life events. I absolutely love hearing from people and having a dialogue. And especially, I'd love to hear from content creators who want to do their part in shaping a better narrative. So please reach out.
Beautiful. Thank you once again, Erin. This has been truly an incredible way to start my day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To get access to all of the free videos and interviews, visit sobrietystartshere.com.